My father-in-law spent 10 years trying to humiliate me out of his family, and now he calls me every Sunday to ask if I've updated my emergency kit. I've always been a preparer. Emergency kits in my car, backup plans for my backup plans, mental maps of every exit in every building I walk into. My wife's family has mocked me for it since we got married, especially her father. The night before their 40th anniversary cruise, he pulled me aside and said, "If I see that little survival bag on my ship, I'm throwing it overboard. 1 week, act normal." My wife was standing right there and didn't say a word, so I told him I'd leave it at home and then packed it in my checked luggage anyway. The first day on the ship, I couldn't help myself. I memorized the evacuation routes while everyone else was drinking at the pool, counted the lifeboats, and located the medical bay. My father-in-law caught me reading the emergency placard outside our cabin and laughed so loud other passengers turned to stare. At dinner that night, he announced it to the whole table. You'll never guess what I caught him doing, reading the evacuation map like we're on the Titanic. I smiled and said I'd just like to be prepared. He leaned back in his chair and grinned at me. Prepared for what? An iceberg in the Caribbean? My wife squeezed my hand under the table, but she was laughing too. The next morning, he caught me checking the expiration date on a fire extinguisher and started calling me Captain Catastrophe, loud enough for the entire deck to hear. At the pool, he told a group of strangers, "That's my son-in-law. He's already planned 3 ways to abandon my daughter if we start sinking." I stopped responding by day 3, which only made him push harder. He started narrating my movements like a nature documentary. And here we see the anxious male checking his surroundings for threats. Notice how he cannot relax even in paradise. His brother laughed so hard he choked on a shrimp. By day 4, I'd started eating meals in our cabin just to avoid him. But my wife said I was being dramatic and that I needed to come to the anniversary dinner or I'd embarrass her. So I put on a suit and showed up and sat at the end of the table while her father gave his toast. He talked about 40 years of marriage, about watching his daughter grow up. Then his eyes found me. Of course, my little girl didn't marry the man I expected. She married the only guy in America who brings a tourniquet to a beach vacation. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all of them cackling while I sat there trying to keep my expression neutral. He wasn't done. 30 years from now, sweetheart, when you're giving your anniversary toast, I hope you can say your husband finally learned how to relax. I looked at my wife. She was staring at her plate. I tried to say something about being prepared not being the same as being afraid, and he cut me off without looking at me. "Relax, son. Nothing bad is going to happen. You're not important enough for the universe to throw a disaster at you." The whole table drank to 40 more years, and I made my decision. I was done. I'd book a flight home in the morning and tell my wife she could come with me or stay, but I was finished with these people. After dinner, I went up to the deck to figure out what I was going to say to her. That's when I heard the screaming. I knew before I started running that something had gone wrong because the sound wasn't excitement or laughter. It was terror. I found him in the hallway outside the elevator, flat on his back with my mother-in-law sobbing over him. His face was gray and he was clutching his chest while his other hand clawed at the carpet. People were standing around doing nothing, just staring with their phones out like they were watching a movie. Part of me wanted to stand there too. Part of me wanted to let him see what it felt like to need someone who wasn't coming, but I shoved through and dropped to my knees beside him anyway, because that's not who I am. His eyes locked onto mine, and I watched 10 years of mockery drain out of them completely. He grabbed my hand so hard I thought he might break my fingers. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I told him to stop talking and focus on breathing. I dug the aspirin out of my pocket and made him chew it, loosened his collar, elevated his legs with someone's beach bag, and kept my hand on his chest the entire time. My wife appeared out of nowhere and froze when she saw me kneeling over her father. "What do I do?" she asked, and her voice cracked on every word. I told her to get the ship's medical team, and she ran faster than I'd ever seen her move. The doctor arrived 6 minutes later, and I gave her his symptoms, his approximate age, the time of onset, and the fact that I'd administered aspirin within 90 seconds. She looked at me like I'd handed her a gift. They stabilized him enough to call for an emergency helicopter evacuation, and when the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, she pulled me aside. The aspirin and the response time are the only reasons he's still alive. Without both, he would have died on that carpet. My wife was standing close enough to hear every word. He survived. A month later, he showed up at my house with a professional-grade emergency kit in his hands, the expensive kind. He looked at me and his voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Teach me. I never want to feel that helpless again."